So good to be back in my office. What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to my office. One aspect of our clinical work that I always find really interesting is all of those small, sometimes kind of tiny things that as an aggregate really help foster safety in the therapy work for our clients. So in today's video, I thought I would share kind of quick fire style a lot of those little small things that seem to really help foster safety in the work that I do with my clients. Keep in mind, this is anecdotal. I know it really depends on what population you work with, your therapeutic style, all kinds of other variables as well. And before we get into it, I want to emphasize that these are kind of peripheral extras as far as how we foster safety. So I'm not talking about the heavy hitters, the things we definitely learn about in school and in our trainings for how to make sure we're fostering a safe space. I'm talking about all the things that go kind of above and beyond. If you're not doing these things, it's okay. You're not creating necessarily an unsafe environment. They're just kind of like extras. Without further ado, let's hop into some of these small ways that you can help foster safety with your clients. Number one, name your fees, or if applicable, insurance accepted on your website, online profiles, etc. Now I'm just getting started and I'm already aware that I'm saying something that some people might find a little bit controversial. You do not have to post these things to your website or your online directory profiles. It is to your discretion. Personally, I do choose to post these things to my website because I'm so aware of how difficult it already is for clients to find a therapist who's the right fit. I have a whole video covering the question of whether you should post your rates online or not, so I'll link to that below if you want to do more of a deep dive into it. The next little tip to foster safety with clients is another one that applies for before a client has ever even booked with you just yet, and that's to tell potential clients all the steps involved to book an initial session with you clearly on your website, on your online profiles. This might feel so second nature to us that we might not even think to post this process on our website, but if, let's say, typically the way you do it is you have people fill out an online contact form, then you schedule an initial phone screen, and then after they book the appointment, they have to fill out some intake paperwork, and then they can attend the first appointment. It's really helpful to name all of that on your website so that folks know, okay, here's the steps involved in order to book an appointment. It can help build trust and safety. The next little tip piggybacks on the last one, and that's for once clients have booked with you for their first session, let them know exactly what to expect when they first arrive at your office, or when applicable, when they first arrive in your teletherapy waiting room. Reaching out to a new therapist and booking that first session is incredibly anxiety provoking for almost everyone, myself included. And so any little tidbits you can give to new clients about what the experience is going to be like once they arrive, from little details to where to find parking or where the public transportation is, to what to find in your waiting room if you have a receptionist that's going to greet them, or if they need to push one of those little buttons to let you know that they are there. Letting them know all those details helps them feel a lot more comfortable and mentally prepared in order to arrive to their first session. The next little tip to foster safety with clients is to consider sharing small, appropriate self-disclosure in your marketing materials to help clients build trust with you. Now, this one really depends on the population that you work with, your therapeutic orientation, and again, other variables as well. But I found that even in highly boundaried contexts, it still can make sense to consider some amount of personal disclosure, such as saying something like, I'm really passionate about working with folks who, things that just acknowledge your humanity rather than just, I help folks who. And in some cases, it may be appropriate to disclose a little bit more if it could be for the benefit of potential clients to have a sense that you're trustworthy, that you might be the right person to help them. Another small way to foster safety with clients is to have your couch or your chair backed all the way against a wall. If you have it kind of scooched somewhere away from the wall or in the middle of the room, it can feel a little uncomfortable. There's something grounding about having it kind of touching another surface. It kind of reminds me of being a little kid and being afraid that there's a monster hiding under the bed. If your bed were touching the floor, then there's no way that there's a monster back there. And I know it might sound a little bit silly, but just knowing that there can't be anything back here because the couch is touching the wall can kind of create this psychological sense of safety in a similar way. Another small way to foster safety with clients for those of you who meet in person is to have a clear exit route from wherever your client is sitting to the door. This seems to be particularly true for folks with more trauma in their background. Being able to see how you can exit the office, and even better if you can see the door itself, can be very comforting, knowing if I need to, I can bolt at any time. Another little tip is to ask clients directly if there's anything you can do to make your space feel more comfortable for them. Now, this definitely applies to in-person settings, but it can also apply in teletherapy settings as well. Personally, I don't ask this of every single client, but I do check in with clients who are showing signs that they're feeling tense or anxious, maybe just at being simply present in the office or in the teletherapy session. Then I'll check in, and sometimes they do have something very specific. It might be something as simple as, it'd be really nice to have a glass of water, or it might sound like, reconfiguring the furniture, something like turning a photo around that is triggering for whatever reason. Making those changes, if we can be really helpful, of course, within reason. So you can always collaborate with your client to find a happy middle if whatever they're asking for is a little bit too involved to actually follow through on. Another little way to foster safety in the therapy relationship is when you don't know something, acknowledge it. Now, obviously, it could be harmful if we pretend to know about something that we don't know about, but sometimes we might feel this sense of pressure of I'm supposed to be able to help my client through whatever is coming up for them, and so let me try to seem like I am able to help them even if I have no idea what they're talking about right now. Personally, I've found that when I acknowledge that I don't know about something that a client is bringing up, it not only is helpful to their process, because then we can actually problem solve and tackle the issue if I need to make a referral or offer consultation or just acknowledge that I need to explore something further and get back to them. But it's also really helpful in fostering trust. If we are comfortable enough to acknowledge when we don't know something, it shows that we're a person of integrity and that we're ultimately prioritizing whatever our client needs rather than prioritizing trying to make sure that we look like we know what we're talking about. Another way to foster safety with clients is to approach differences with curiosity. So regardless of the difference, whether it's kind of religious, cultural, political, or lifestyle related, if your client has something about them that's really different from you or your worldview, approach it with curiosity. So it's a little bit similar to the last tip in that we might be in a way acknowledging that this is something we're less familiar with, but it's far more helpful to acknowledge that reality than to try to pretend that we know all about something around our client's experience when we don't. So you can frame it by saying something like, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Or, I'm not as familiar with that. I'd love to hear more about it if you'd like to share. The fact that there's a difference isn't a source of judgment or something negative like that. Another small way to foster safety with clients is to be able to laugh about rather than apologize for your humanity. I'm talking about those little moments that inevitably happen at some point during sessions, like particularly while I was pregnant, needing to pee in the middle of session, or, something gets caught in your throat, you need to clear your throat or step out and blow your nose or take a sip of water because you're a human being and these moments happen, even if you do what you can to, use the restroom before session or all of those types of things. It's going to happen at some point. And rather than apologizing for it or being hard on yourself for how that's interrupting whatever is going on in your session, it's much more helpful to just acknowledge it with a little bit of humor, just kind of say, excuse me, and carry on. That can actually just kind of help pivot things right back to your client much faster. Another small way to foster safety with clients is to let small tangents happen in your conversation from time to time. Now, obviously, some clients may need much stricter boundaries around this than others, especially if they're prone to just kind of completely meander off into a new place or completely avoid whatever the focus is meant to be. But sometimes if we're overly kind of trying to bring clients back to the topic at hand when a tangent is popping up, it can actually miss an opportunity for something special that might be embedded in the tangent. Sometimes the tangent can have kind of a free associative quality to it where we discover something new, or it might also be a coping tool where the client is kind of mentally taking a break from something challenging before coming back to it. So I found that if I can let tangents happen sometimes within reason, then it can be really helpful to our clients in fostering safety. Another tool to consider leveraging in order to foster safety is, when appropriate, consider showing your emotions. Now, at least for me, historically, I was taught to really avoid showing my emotions. Nonetheless, I'm still human, and apparently sometimes my emotions would still show without me even realizing it sometimes. And I was surprised to find that over time, those moments when I showed my emotional reactions, let's say to a traumatic experience that my client was having or an angering experience that a client was having, it would be months later sometimes, and clients would point back to a memory from one of those moments where my emotional reaction was actually incredibly transformative to them. So I've since adapted things over time, and now I consider when appropriate to let my emotions show in reaction to whatever's coming up for my clients so that they can see what a reasonable, appropriate reaction to what they're bringing up might look like. And the last little tip for fostering safety is to invite feedback from your clients. Now, this kind of lives in a similar category of some of the other tools where we're essentially acknowledging that we may not always know what's best for our clients and we might miss things. So if we directly invite feedback, we're acknowledging like, hey, if there's anything I'm missing here, is there anything that you want to change? That can be really helpful. Well, I know there are many more tools than these to help foster safety in the therapy relationship, and the ones that I've shared here may seem so obvious that you already do them and they feel like second nature to you. I also recently made a video about how hospitality can really be part of the therapy work as well, and I think that's related to this topic as far as making it safer through hospitality. So I'll link to that video below if you want to kind of dive into some of those things further. And before we close, I'd like to thank TherapyNotes.com for sponsoring this video. TherapyNotes is an all-inclusive practice management system that helps you with scheduling, notes, billing. They have a HIPAA-secure telehealth platform and so much more. If you'd like to check out TherapyNotes, you can get 2 months to try it for free with no commitment just by clicking the link in the description of this video. Well, I hope you found this video helpful, and I'll say again something I said at the top, that these are all just small kind of peripheral tools to add on to the work we're already doing in order to foster safety. These aren't like the primary things that we do to make therapy a safe space. I imagine there are a lot more items that apply in that category than what I named here, so if there are any that you can think of that you do, feel free to leave a comment below and add them to the list so that other people can learn from your experiences as well. And until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well.